Javier, I hope you can read the slides and hear me correctly.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So we have a 10-minute presentation slot. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present an update on the Eclipse CAP. Usually it's a bit longer to say Conformity Access Policy. We just shortened that with the acronym CAP. With the first of all, what is it for? Then an update on the progress with the ISO submission, with the specification, the reference implementation, and the TCK. And then the next step that are planned for this year. And of course, happy to take question also at the end. Maybe one slide first on why did we decide to go for defining the Eclipse conformity assessment profile. When we talk about interoperability in a data space, there is, of course, the recurrent question about technical interoperability, but there is also this compliance interoperability. If I want to trust the data, where is it going? What are the domain regulation? What are the constraints that my domain needs to enforce on the infrastructure? NIST, Second Cloud, ISO 27001. Well, the good news is that the market has already come up with a solution, which is conformity assessment, risk management. Unfortunately, those PDF one-pagers are not machine readable. And it's very hard to create policy to automate the evaluation of such risk management. And that's exactly what the Eclipse CAP tried to solve. So the first thing, as I said, compliance is not equivalent to compatibility. The link that we can make is that this is semantically interoperable. As I will demonstrate in a moment, when we talk about a profile here, we talk about RDF data. So we don't talk about protocols, but the semantic of how to express a meaning. And here we talk about semantic interoperability. The excellent also support that we have is that everything that this Eclipse CAP does is based on an existing ISO certification standards, which is the ISO IEC 17000, which specifically explain and define all the work of all the terms, vocabulary, taxonomy of conformity vocabulary. For example, what is the difference between an attestation, a declaration, a certification? What is the difference between a verification and a validation, audit, sampling, testing, and so on? So all those words and definitions are already defined in an ISO standard. And what the Eclipse CAP is translating this human English version of the specification ISO 1 into a machine readable version of it. And we do that because indeed data space, we believe, is very important. Unfortunately, besides many of the blockers, we see that to some of the decision maker, there need to be a level of reassurance that says, okay, you don't give up on your compliance. So how did we enable this machine readable version of the ISO 17000 standards? Well, we based the Eclipse CAP on verifiable credential. The same verifiable credential format from the W3C, which is also being used in the other standards from the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group. So there is a technical interoperability at that level. And this VC, so credentials, verifiable credentials, enable us, you, to have the traceability of who has made a claim on which type of services, scope, and to have the tamper-proof verification that those claims have not been changed. Why is it important to use a credential? Because only through cryptographic signature, you can decentralize a bit of information. Otherwise, we create, without encapsulating the Eclipse CAP within a credential, you will have a single source of truth that will say basically, you are ISO, you are Second Cloud, you are CFAB, or you have such and such certification. If you wrap that into a verifiable credential, then you are able to use, for example, OpenID for VC, DCP, other type of claim protocols to exchange them, which is a key aspect of that. And there is also the idiom thing that the proof is inside the pudding, if I'm translating that correctly. So this Eclipse CAP is being used by GaiaX, one of the members of the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group, to automate the evaluation and the certification of GAIA-X labels. So there is already an open source implementation of a software, GAIA-X specific, that use the Eclipse CAP profile to issue labels and attestation. Now, in terms of pass submission, what is the status? Pass submission, you need to have three types of deliverable or input. You need to have a specification. For the specification, we have today the ontology. Ontology, that's the presentation of the class, the property, the data properties, to which type of entity this property can be attached to, what type of class or property this property, can be described with, so the domain and the range. And that is already out there available. We will work on converting that content into the expected format template from the past submission, but the raw material is already there. In terms of reference implementation, everything is suffixed by beta because we haven't gone through an official first release. So even if this is version 1, 2, or other, this is always suffixed by beta. The last release is from end of 2025 last year with the changes that you can see on the screen. The reference implementation, when we talk about a profile, that will be the OOL, so the OWL file, total file, which is one way to serialize the JSON link data context, so that you can also embed that inside a credential and other type of claims. So you can manipulate these claims as RDF information. And the final one that needs, I admit, some more work in a dedicated standalone repository to really shape that as a TCK is the shape engine that basically validates if the declaration of a CAP piece of information conforms to the profile. And for that, we use W3C shapes, shackle shapes. There are already different type of shackle shapes engine. So there is potentially different type of TCK for the context of that implementation. We will use Python and yes, use the shackle validation TCK. Validation of the proprietary shackle shapes. And that's almost the end of the presentation. Now we will jump to the next steps. So how do you, for example, use the Eclipse CAP with ODRL, or the Open Digital Right Language? The same policy language, the same domain-specific language for policies that is being used in other protocols and specifications from the Eclipse Dataspace Working Group. So the good news is that that's possible. The bad news is that you cannot use it alone. So for that, you need to have another extension, which is also done by GAIA-X and already listed inside on the ODRL website community page, which is OCV. And that's the capacity that's enabling an ODRL policy to use verifiable credential by adding, as you can see in yellow, highlighted in yellow on the slides, an OVC constraint. And this OVC constraint, for example, will say that you need to have a credential subject, so a signed claim here, for instance, of a certification. You will have almost like a JSON path, the path to the property that you want to assess. So that's the left operand. And then the right operand will be the equivalent. So for example, here in that ODRL policy, you specify that this policy will be able to, it's a permission. And the constraint of that permission is that there is a certification of either ISO 27001 or PCI DSS. And that's how you can enforce compliance, regulatory compliance or policy compliance on top of an exchange, a data exchange. The big next step that we have also is that we will migrate from GitHub to GitLab, mainly for maintenance purposes. We are a lot more familiar with GitLab. So we will do the migration. Nothing will change except the URL, but the content, and we'll hopefully, not hopefully, I'm sure it will help us to have better type of artifact for the TCK, for the specification. We are simply the contributors that are today working on the Eclipse Cap are simply more used to use GitLab. So we have initiated this migration from GitLab to GitLab with the help of the Eclipse Office. And of course, this project lives only because you are there and here with the community. We already received feedback from the community in terms of the naming of the properties. So that's probably going to be a breaking change. We will see how we either we leave that in parallel on top of the existing property, or we just bump to version 3, still beta. Yeah, and well, that's basically all. So that was maybe a bit shorter than expected, but more room for the others. And if there is any question, I will be very happy to take them now or later in writing.